Hey, this is Paul from Les Marks Guitars. Welcome back. So this is video number 3 in a series of videos that I'm doing on how to build a scarf joint neck. And this is the neck in question. So what we have is a truss rod in, a fingerboard glued down to a neck blank. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do inlays. So it's going to get your standard inlays, just the dot inlays all the way down the board like where they normally go. And the 12th fret is going to get this little guy right here. This is hand cut. This is a tribal shape that I came up with years ago, and it's become a standard on all Les Marks guitars. It also gets 2 little dots that go along with it, and you'll see how it's done. So I make it by hand. I cut it out with a jeweler's saw, and I sand it down with files and sandpaper and all that stuff until it's nice and smooth and clean. I'm also going to use a Dremel to route it out. I got a very small bit that's going to route it out freehand, and you'll see it as well. And also what we're going to do is after that's done, we're going to cut the shape of the neck and the shape of the headstock, and we're going to radius the fingerboard as well. So if you want to see how it got to this point, go ahead and visit video number 1 and 2, and that'll catch you up to where we are right now. Let's get started. Here's the inlay. Here's a pretty good shot of it here. There's a center line going down the fingerboard this way. There's one going across the board this way in between 11th and 12th fret. And that's going to line me up with that little dot, that center dot, actually this way. That center dot's going to line me up this way. The other line is going to keep me centered with these 2 tips right here. And there's also a line here and here. Like I said, probably hard to see on this video, but that's the length of this inlay. So with all those marks, this thing's going to sit exactly where I want it. And basically just like that. And there'll be a little dot right here and a little dot right there. So I'm going to put a little dab of super glue on the back side of this. And I'm going to stick it down. I'm going to line it up where it needs to go and stick it down. I won't hit any accelerant on it because I want it just a little bit of time just in case I have to move it. And you don't want a lot of super glue on there because what it'll do is when you knock it back off, it's going to take some wood away with it. So just a couple little dots. Once it's stuck on there, I'm going to trace around it with a very sharp X-Acto blade and just kind of score the shape around, knock it off, and then I'll have a scraped shape of this, and I'll take my Dremel and I'll route it out with that little bit. And by the way, this Dremel is installed in my StewMac router base. I don't mind giving those guys a plug. They're very good to me. All right, so here we go. Alright, I mixed up a small amount of epoxy. It's a 5-minute epoxy along with some dust from this wood. This is poison wood. And I'm going to put a little bit in this void right here. And we're going to put the inlay in. This stuff will act kind of like a lubricant as well. It'll help push it in there. Sometimes when they're real tight they may crack. Hopefully that won't happen to me. Hope I didn't just jinx myself. Kind of pressure where it won't go in. I got this little tool here that I made. push it in. And I'm going a little bit below the surface because when I use my router on this to, when I radius this fingerboard, it's going to come down, it's going to take a lot of this material out, and it'll leave that inlay pretty much alone. I'm going to drill these 2 dots now. I've got a piece of tape on this drill bit to set as a depth gauge, and here we go. Pretty simple. Okay, so after I've radiused the fingerboard, the depth of the fret slot changes. It gets a little shallower on the ends here, this end and this end. So what I want to do is I want to take this saw, and I've set it up with the guide, and I've measured the fret width I'm going to use against this tool here. Then I use this tool to set up the depth of the blade, the depth of the cut. So this saw is going to go in the fret slot, and you can see that it fits all the way down. There's the depth that I want in the middle, and then the ends is a little bit shallow. So I'm going to just run this back and forth here like this. I'm going to clean them up, and what this is going to do, it's going to keep the radius inside the fret slot so that the fret wire is almost touching the bottom of the fret slot. So it leaves very little space in between, and it has a nice curve to it. All right, well, I'm going to call it quits for today, but it's looking good. Remember I told you I countersunk them inlays? It's because when I radius it and I run the bit over them, it might bust them out because they're delicate. And it does a really good job. It barely kisses them in the last pass. And that's really smooth, really nice. I did sand it by hand, just a hair. You can see the radius on it right there, hopefully. And it's looking really clean. So there's a little more to do to this thing, so stay tuned for part 4. If you like what you saw here today, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share my channel as well. So anyway, I hope to see you next time. Thanks for joining me here at Les March Guitars, where custom is what it's all about.